closer to the sun too long.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Senator Tom Daschle, Representative Richard Gephardt, Glenda Parsons, members of the Building and Construction Trades Unions, and students from Brent Elementary.
Mr. President, Senator Dash, please be seated. Senator Daschle, Congressman Gephardt, members of the House, members of the Senate, my friends, this is a glorious, beautiful day, and it's my great pleasure to join you here on the South Lawn in front of this wonderful red schoolhouse. Now, you have been America's education president for the last 8 years, and I want to thank you for the tremendous leadership on behalf of America's school children. It's my great pleasure to welcome here to the White House hundreds of parents, teachers, administrators, concerned citizens who've been working hard for 4 years to support your efforts to rebuild, repair, and modernize America's school buildings. And I want to single out the Rebuild America Schools Coalition, which has led the fight for a number of years, and the other groups that are here. Let's thank all of them for their support over the years. Now, all of these concerned citizens and so many others recognize that all of our children deserve to go to safe, modern, and healthy schools. The people here today represent millions of Americans who are tired of congressional leaders who won't act, who ignore the reality that are school buildings all across this country that are really bursting at the seams. We have 53 million children in our nation's schools now, a national new record, and I'll tell you more and more are on the way. Mr. President, I've been to schools where the rain comes through holes in the roof. I've been to schools that are so old that they're inaccessible to children with disabilities. And I've been to schools where the air is so bad that it poses a health hazard to children with asthma. We can tell our children to learn to high standards. How can we do that when we then ask them to learn in dingy, crowded, and worn-out buildings? Everywhere I go, local school officials ask me the question again and again, when is Washington going to help us? And I'll tell you it's a very good question. Fortunately, a strong bipartisan coalition led by Congressman Charlie Rangel and Congresswoman Nancy Johnson has been listening. A clear majority of the House of Representatives, 228 members, Democrats and Republicans, now support your efforts to rebuild and modernize America's schools. Some people in politics talk about an education recession. And I'll say that there is no consensus here in Washington. They say that it's impossible to reach consensus, that Republicans and Democrats simply can't work together to do what's right for America. Well, I'll tell you they are wrong. This country would be a lot better off if they supported this important bipartisan legislation. Now, other critics of this legislation say that this is purely a local matter. Well, the federal government can help states and can help local governments build highways and airports and prisons, and why not schools? Mr. President, instead of building immaculate prisons, we need to be building bright, safe, and exciting places where our children can learn. We need to build schools for the 21st century that really are centers of community, schools that are open longer and later and for more people, including our senior citizens. Instead of building schools for 1950, we need to build schools for 2050. Schools designed with the community and for the community that reflect a dedication to excellence and to innovation. And we can do that if congressional leaders will listen to the American people, listen to their own members, and listen to the wonderful parent that I'm about to introduce to you now. Glenda Parsons lives in Loudoun County, Virginia. She's the mother of 3 children and her husband, Chuck. You all stand up and be recognized. It's great to have you all here. Loudoun County, as many of you know, is one of the fastest growing suburbs in Virginia, if not the entire country. And the local school officials are barely coping with the need to build more and more schools. In the next 6 years, local school officials will have to build some 23 new schools or more. Ms. Parsons can tell you all about that in a very direct way for what it means for her and her children to go to these overcrowded schools. Please welcome this fine parent, Glenda Parsons. Glenda, it's great to have you with us.
Hello, my name is Glenda Parsons. I am a mother. I have 3 children, 2 sons in high school and 1 daughter in middle school. I live in Loudoun County, Virginia, the 3rd fastest growing county in our nation. My children know school overcrowding firsthand. Of the 8 years my children have attended school in this county, their schools were either over capacity or downright overcrowded. Let me tell you what this means for my children when they go to school every day. My son's high school was originally designed for 1,000 students, but last year enrolled over 1,600. One-way hallways were instituted. There was such a strain on locker space that for 2 years my son Aaron had to share lockers. Getting textbooks between classes was impossible, so he did not use his locker at all last year, but rather carried everything he needed in a backpack all day. Over the years, both of my sons have taken classes in trailers, trekking through the rain, the slush, the snow to get to class. My sons and their classmates were alienated from the school and couldn't hear the bells or school announcements. My sons received the message that this teacher or subject was not important enough to have a real classroom. My children know what it's like to have only 2 to 3 minutes to consume lunch while standing up, because there are too many students trying to get through the lunch lines in 30 minutes and not enough places to sit. Overcrowding causes my daughter, who is 11 years old, to go from 7:45 in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon without eating every other day. My children's teachers often have had no lunchrooms. The teachers eat in the hallways or in the administrative offices. Some do not have assigned rooms or desks, but rolling carts. Overcrowding limits school activities in many ways. Parent volunteers have no place to park during the day. More guidance counselors are needed for the additional students, but there is nowhere for them to work. More teachers are needed, but there is nowhere for them to park their cars, eat their lunches, or do their class preparation. When the auditorium and other facilities were designed to seat 1,000 students, you cannot gather the whole student body at assemblies, concerts, or sporting events. In the workplace, what would be the effect on performance of cramped, restrictive, small, and unyielding spaces? Yet we expect our children's ability to learn to be unaffected. Educating our children should be the nation's first priority. We must do better for our families, for our future. It is critical that Congress enact President Clinton's school construction proposals. That is not to say that Loudoun County doesn't want to do its part, but it will not be easy for us to afford the schools we need alone. Over the next 6 years, we need to build 23 schools in our county. One middle school alone costs about $25 million. The problem is too big and we cannot do it alone. Now, I am very pleased to be able to introduce someone who has worked tirelessly to improve the quality of our schools over the past 8 years. Mr. President, thank you for your efforts to help prepare all of our children for their futures. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to introduce the President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton.
Didn't she do a great job? Man. Well, first let me thank Glenda Parsons. I thought that she was eloquent, insistent, comprehensive, and enlightening for anybody that hasn't heard about this issue and why it matters. And let me thank Secretary Riley for pointing out that the federal government helps states and localities build roads and highways and prisons, and schools are the most important network to the 21st century of all. And let me thank you, sir, in a larger sense for nearly 8 years of service now, during which you have reduced the paperwork burden on local school districts and states, but mightily increased the level of assistance we're giving them to do the things that work. And that's one reason, along with the outstanding work being done at the state level by people like Governor Patton from Kentucky, who's here with us today, and local educators, that the test scores are up, the dropout rate's down, the college going rate is up. We're moving in the right direction, and Dick Riley deserves his fair share of credit for that, and I thank him very much. I would like to thank the extraordinary array of members of Congress who are here, including the Democratic leaders of the Senate and House, Senator Daschle and Congressman Gebhardt. I'd like to thank the people from the administration who are here who worked with us to help to develop this very important proposal, including Secretary Larry Summers and Jack Lew and Sylvia Matthews from the Office of Management and Budget. I want to thank the people who are here from the D.C. City Council and the Coalition to Rebuild America's Schools, teachers, administrators, architects, members of the construction trades, and many others. And I also want to thank the people who came out here all morning building our new schoolhouse. We wanted people to have a little red schoolhouse here to emphasize what this is about. And our special guest from Brent Elementary School, let's welcome them here. The little red schoolhouse behind me was erected as evidence of the commitment of all of us here to give our children the safest and best schools in the world. In its unfinished state, it's also a symbol of the unfinished work still before the Congress. Nearly 2 months into the new school year, The majority leadership still hasn't given a single dime for school construction or modernization, not even enough to build a one-room schoolhouse. Week after week now, I've been signing continuing resolutions to give Congress more time to work on this year's budget. But the time for tardy slips is over. It's time for the leadership to put progress before partisanship and address at last the needs of our schools and our children. For nearly 8 years now, we've worked hard to turn our economy around. We've replaced record deficits with record surpluses. We now enjoy the longest economic expansion in history. Today, we received even more good news about the economy. According to our Treasury Department and the Office of Management and Budget, the surplus for the 2000 fiscal year is the largest in American history, $237 billion. This is the third surplus in a row, the first time our nation has done that in 51 years, since 1949, when Harry Truman was president. It's worth remembering, I think, that when Vice President Gore and I took office in 1993, the deficit was $290 billion. The debt had quadrupled in 12 years. Economists predicted that this year, instead of a $237 billion surplus, we would have a $455 billion deficit. Working together, we turned that around, not by chance, but by choice. Now, to the moment at hand. What are we going to do with our prosperity? What are we going to do with our surplus? It is not the government's surplus, it is the people's surplus. How shall we apply it to our common goals and needs and challenges? I feel very strongly that we ought to first make a commitment to keep the prosperity going by paying the debt down over the next 12 years, to keep interest rates down. Then I think we ought to take what's left and have a tax cut we can afford that focuses on sending our kids to college, providing our kinfolks with long-term care who need it, helping working families with child care, and helping all Americans save for retirement, because savings rates are not high enough in our country today. And I think we ought to save some money to invest in education and in health care, in science and technology, in the environment, in defense, in the future of America. So, in other words, there are big opportunities and big challenges out there, but I believe we have to first stay with what got us here. Pay down the debt, strengthen the Social Security and Medicare systems for the aging of America when all people like me, the baby boom generation, become too old to work, and we don't want to be a burden on the rest of you. And we need to then seize this opportunity to take the money that's left to invest in our future, especially in education. You've heard what has already been said, but I think it's worth reiterating. We have the largest, most diverse student body in history. They're in overcrowded classrooms, but a lot of things are going right in America. Reading and math scores are up. Hispanic and African American students are taking advanced placement courses in record numbers. Over the last 6 years, a 300% increase for Hispanic students, a 500% increase for African American students. The college going rate at a record high because we have provided more college assistance increase than any time since the GI Bill. So a lot of things are going well. SAT math scores are the highest since 1969 when we went to the moon. But we have more to do. And I want to focus on this today. And let me just say one other thing I'd like to say, because I really want to thank the Vice President for this. When we started in 1994 with a goal to hook up all of our classrooms and schools to the internet, only 14% of the schools and 3% of the classrooms in America were hooked up. Now, 95% of the schools and 65% of the classrooms are hooked up, thanks in no small measure Thanks in no small measure to an idea Al Gore led our fight for, the E-rate, which gives discounts of up to 90% to low-income schools so that all of our schools can afford to hook on. Now, what's all that got to do with why we're here? The average public school building in America is 42 years old. Decades of use have taken their toll. Leaking roofs, broken boilers, crowded trailers. It's hard to educate kids in schools that are falling down. Some of our schools are so old they literally cannot be wired for internet access. I have been in schools where when one room works, that is, they turn on all the lights and they're using the lab, and then somebody logs onto the net in one room, it will literally short out everybody else in the school building. You also need to know there are buildings in New York that are still being heated with coal in coal-fired furnaces. The average school building in Philadelphia is 65 years old, and about the same in New Orleans. So those of us that have been around the country looking at this know that you've got the problem of the old schools, and then all the places we've been, including the smallest place I've been with a lot of trailers was a community of Jupiter, Florida, which is not very big, and they had 12 trailers outside one school. So this is a national challenge. They're bad for our children's education. I might also say that they can be quite bad for our children's health, especially if they have asthma or if they have other disabilities. And this is something I think that has been underestimated. You know, just the cost in education days of asthma in our children is staggering throughout the United States today. We ought not to be sending the kids into school buildings that make it worse. Now, I have asked Congress to send me an education bill that does the following. First, give us $1.3 billion to fix up thousands of schools in desperate need of repair right now. And let's do that over 5 years. We could repair 5,000 schools a year over 5 years. It would be a big thing to do, and it would help a lot. Second, I have asked Congress to enact the bipartisan, and I emphasize bipartisan, school construction tax proposal to provide $25 billion in school construction and modernization bonds. Now, you just heard Glenda explain why Loudoun County couldn't bear this burden alone. Even counties where the average income of the school parents may be above average, there is a limit to how much you can do. They got to build 23 schools in 6 years. Can you imagine how much construction that is? That's in one school district. That's just one. We estimate the deficit in school repair and school construction in America, given the condition of the buildings, the size of the population, and the projected population over the next 5 years, is somewhere between $110 and $125 billion. I don't think it's too much to ask the federal government at a time of record surpluses to provide $25 billion in school construction and modernization bonds. It will help to build or modernize 6,000 schools. In the process, it will create some good jobs. It will be especially helpful in the poorest areas of our country, like Native American communities and others with greater needs and the total inability to raise the money at the local level. And third, Congress should follow through on our proposal to help fund 8,000 after-school and summer school programs to help 2.5 million kids boost their test scores, stay out of trouble, and get more involved in their communities. If you think about how overcrowded these schools are, it is more important than ever that we allow them to stay open in the afternoon and to provide summer programs so that the kids that may not get it during the daytime when they're being crammed in, pushed around, and can't even sit down for lunch, according to Glenda, at least to have the ability to stay late or come back in the evening or come in on the weekend or be involved in a summer program that will make sure they don't fall behind. So that's also a very important part of this. Fourth thing I'd like to urge them to do is to provide $1.75 billion to help pay for almost 50,000 teachers to reduce class sizes in the first grade, the next big step of our 100,000 teacher program to reduce class size in the early grades. We know that new qualified teachers can help children learn. And finally, I ask Congress to support our initiatives to improve teacher training, increase accountability, and to turn around failing schools or shut them down and open them under new management. We have here, I will say again what I said at lunch, Governor Patton is Exhibit A, and I want to say, I've been working on this for 22 years now. I was there when, under the Reagan administration, Secretary Bell issued the Nation at Risk report, a brilliant report. I was there when President Bush invited all the governors to Charlottesville, Virginia, and we had a summit and established goals for the nation. And I helped to write that document, and it was a great and moving meeting. But I can tell you something. If somebody asked me what's changed in the years since, I'll tell you what's changed. We actually know now that failing schools can be turned around, and we know how to do it, and we didn't before. And so I want to emphasize this. I was in a school in western Kentucky with Paul Patton that was one of the worst schools in Kentucky 4 years ago, where only 12% of the kids were reading at or above grade level, 5% of the kids were doing math at or above grade level, no kids were doing science at or above grade level. And under the system he put in place that we want for America, in 3 years, the numbers went from 12 to 57% in reading, from 5 to 70% in math, from 0 to 63% in science. That's one place, one of the best elementary schools in his entire state. We can do that everywhere, and we should. I mean, I have very strong feelings about this, that these kids deserve a decent place to go to school because they can't all learn. I was in Harlem the other day in a school that 2 years ago had, listen to this, 2 years ago had 80% of the kids doing reading or math below grade level. 2 years later, new principal, new morale, school uniform, something I like, high standards. In 2 years, they went from 80% doing reading and math below grade level to 74% doing reading and math at or above grade level. A total turnaround. You can do this. We can do this all over America. But it is illusory to think that we can tell all these kids and their parents are the most important things in the world to us, but here, go to school in broken windows and leaky roofs and sit in this closet somewhere or go out into a busted trailer, and we'll get around to you when we can. And meanwhile, we got all the money in the world to spend on roads and airports because they got a bigger lobby than little kids do. Now, this is not complicated here. And we have fooled around with this for 2 years, and the problem's just getting bigger. So I say, before Congress goes home, let's do this for the kids in the future. At the end of World War II, when my generation was starting schools, the national government, under President Truman, with Republican as well as Democratic support, did not hesitate to help our children find the space to go to school. In a world where education is even more important than it was then, where the student body is even bigger, and where it is much more diverse, in a world that is much more interconnected, there can be nothing more important than actually acting like we say we believe that our kids are the most important thing in the world to us. Let's do it with the school construction proposal. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'll hold them over there. Oh, good. Okay, great.
What I heard was going right now. We're kind of in a hurry.
That's okay. I didn't know you were playing music. Well, you got the wireless going? Okay, hold it right to me. That's a rule. It's a rule.
So you think they'll live in that?
How you doing? Good to see you.
Look at how pretty you look. You too. Look at all man.
You have to give your pass back.
I can spell it.
Very good.
Thank you.